It will be shown in this video that there is not a single statement contained in the Quran relating to modern embryology that was not well known through direct observation by ancient people, many centuries before the Quran was ever written. Moreover, as evidenced from the previous video, not only was some of this known by ancient Arabs and their predecessors before the Quran was compiled, much of what the Quran actually does say about embryology is scientifically inaccurate. Furthermore, the descriptions are vague. Any scientific and historical knowledge necessarily must detail every process as accurately and precisely as possible. It is not scientific merely to make vague assertions, as it does in Quran 22:5, a verse widely used by apologists for the Quranic embryology claims. It therefore follows that discoveries are very rarely predicted by the Quran until after the discovery has been independently made. One would imagine that a book so full of foreknowledge would be used to predict future discoveries, while it appears that the Quran can only predict current knowledge. Below is what is actually known about embryogenesis, all of which is absent from the Quran. Ancient medicine and anatomy was based on observing the outcomes of miscarriages, abortions, and dissections of female mammals, such as goats and other animals. In the 7th century AD, the Quran did not state anything out of the ordinary, as those scientific facts were well known since ancient times, centuries before Islam. The so-called clinging process was well known, as the fetus is not loose in the womb. It is connected to the mother via an umbilical cord, so by virtue of it being attached, it was said it has clinged onto the mother. Aristotle had even described the function of the umbilical cord as being the exchange medium of blood and nutrients between the child and the mother, a fact the Quran did not mention, showing that earlier physicians were well aware of such things, later mentioned by the Quran in not so much detail. In about the 2nd century AD, Galen described the function of the placenta, embryo, and fetal membranes in great detail. He also explained the stages in which the embryo gradually develops into a fully formed child. These and more references to the Greek contribution to embryology will be shown in a later video. Even the blood clot reference in the Quran was known before Islam. This was shown in the previous video by citing pre-Islamic poetry. As conclusions were observed by the unaided eye, ancient physicians observed differences between the discharged stuff after birth, miscarriages, and abortions. They noticed how during early stages the embryo appears as a dead mass of blood. That is why they thought life initiates from a clotted blood. All those were simple conclusions mentioned by Greek and Indian doctors centuries before the Quran was written. The reality is that the Quranic descriptions are not much advanced than ancient Egyptian embryology. In Chapter 1 of A History of Embryology, Cambridge professor Joseph Needham talks about ancient Egypt's view about embryology. He mentions around 1400 BC, that is 2000 years before Islam, Egyptians made reference to the placenta and its importance as the seat of the soul. And on page 21, he mentions a hymn dedicated to the sun god Aton with embryological connotations. In the home for Oxford University Press's research books and journals called Oxford Academic, there is a research titled Embryology in Babylonia and the Bible, which explores the differences in embryology as conceived by various cultures in the ancient Near East among the Babylonians, Assyrians, and Israelites and their points of similarity. It says in the abstract, embryological theories run the gamut from high science with truths still accepted. Vague Quranic terms that have multiple meanings, such as alaqa to mean clot, leech, or clinging, or the term mudgha to mean chewed up substance or small substance, are often cited as miraculous by Muslims. But these expressions, in the context of a religious and divine teaching to describe the embryo developing in stages, are not anything new either. In fact, far more detailed and accurate descriptions are found in earlier non-Islamic sources. For example, in the book Chemical Embryology by Cambridge professor Joseph Needham, Volume 1, on page 93, he quotes Jewish physicians such as Samuel ha-Yahudi, who lived in the 2nd century, who described the embryo as perihabitan, to mean fruit of the body, which develops as a formless, rolled-up thing, then the Shafir Murakam stage to mean embroidered fetus. Shafir means amniotic sac. Then it goes through various stages until the months have been completed. Rabbi Simlai is also cited, who was a Talmudic rabbi who lived in the 3rd century AD, who described the embryo like a rolled-up scroll. As the Quran and its associated commentaries provide stages of embryological development in the womb and the mixing of fluids contributing towards the child's development, as it does in Quran 76:2, so too does embryology as found within Jewish sources. The link is provided below of this one found in the Babylonian Talmud, composed between 450 and 550 AD. Islamic commentaries for Quran 76:2 mirror Talmudic teachings. For example, in Tafsir Jalalain, it says the human beings are formed from a drop of mixed fluid from a mixture that is from the seminal fluid of the man and the ovarian fluid of the woman. In Tafsir al-Baghawi by early Quran commentator Masood al-Baghawi, says the following for Quran 76:2, after quoting many prominent early Muslim commentators, detailing them from the earliest of Islam's Muslims, relatives and companions of Muhammad, on how they interpreted the verse to mean each parent's fluids contributed an aspect of the child's physiology. This is very similar to the Talmud which was just cited, with Al-Hasan quoted as saying the sperm drop is mixed with menstrual blood to form the child, again just like the Talmud. One of the most significant physicians, considered to be the father of early modern medicine and also called the Prince of Physicians, this is none other than Ibn Sina, or Avicenna as he is known in the West. Here he is quoted by Professor Said Hussein Nasr in his book An Introduction to Islamic Cosmological Doctrines on page 255 as saying that the human being takes its form from two things, the male sperm and the female sperm, to mean the menstrual blood. These then go on to form blood coagulation or congelation. Within ancient Greek embryology in the 5th and 4th centuries BC, they believed the female seed to mean her blood provided vital contributions, and the child grew like rising bread dough in the womb, as explained in this Cambridge University article. The Greek influence upon Quranic embryology will be explained in detail in a later video. Within ancient Indian medicine, there was also the belief that both the male and female fluid contributed towards the development of the embryo. They also believed that the sperm comes from the marrow. These are the same claims the Quran and its associated sources went on to make many centuries later. For example, figures such as Charaka, who lived somewhere between the 2nd century BC and the 2nd century AD. He was one of the principal contributors to Ayurveda, a system of medicine and lifestyle developed in ancient India. He is also known as the editor of the medical treatise entitled Charaka Samhita, one of the foundational texts of classical Indian medicine and Ayurveda. In chapter 4, he details the descriptions on embryonic development, which are very similar to those already mentioned. Sushruta, also called Susruta, amongst variations, was another figure. He lived 1,000 years before Muhammad. However, Susruta left a more lasting and beneficial legacy for humanity than Muhammad ever did, and whose ideas and works are far superior to anything found in Islam or uttered by Muhammad. Susruta is someone who is considered to be the father of surgery. A statue of him is displayed at the Royal Australasian College of Surgeons, Melbourne, Australia, and many academic research articles have been written about him and of his works. In his Susruta Samhita chapter Sharira 3.3, he states the fertilization of Sukra, sperm, and Sonita, female fluid, in the uterus with the presence of the soul results in formation of the embryo. In other words, both he and Sharika, who was just mentioned, postulated embryological development of the child in the womb, very similar to what the Quran and Islamic sources went on to claim much later. This will be shown next with references. In the book by Dr. Kutumbia called Ancient Indian Medicine, on page 2 he mentions the opinions of Charaka and Susruta in regards embryology. On pages 2 to 3 he says that both of these ancient Indian physicians believed that both the male and female contributed their seed, that the secretion of the male is called the sukra, semen, which comes from the bone marrow, and the secretion of the woman is called artava or sonita, which is derived from food by way of blood, going on to give its description as menstrual blood. So even within ancient Indian medicine, they too had the idea that the child was formed from the male semen and the female fluid, and that the semen comes from the spinal marrow. The Quran was simply a copy of these early ideas, plagiarizing information that was pre-existing and even more detailed than the Quran. So in conclusion, there is not a single statement contained in the Quran relating to modern embryology that was not well known through direct observation by ancient physicians many centuries before the Quran was written. The Quranic descriptions are vague to resemble anything scientific. Quranic descriptions are not much advanced than ancient Egyptian embryology or ancient Near Eastern embryology such as the Babylonians. There are also references of the stages of development and fluids mixing within ancient Judaic teachings as found in the Talmud, and also within ancient Indian medicine, which were later mirrored by the Quran as evidenced by its commentaries. The stages of embryonic formation has clear roots, however, within ancient Greek embryology. In the next series of videos, a comprehensive account will be provided proving Greek science's influence upon Quranic embryology and its subsequent impact upon the Arabs.